Hello, amazing people. Welcome back to Building Your Health Esteem. I'm your host, Jerome Craig, and today we're going to be talking about comparison and productivity. So, do you compare yourself to others often? Look, you're normal. We all compare ourselves to other people, and comparison isn't necessarily harmful. But when the comparisons aren't particularly meaningful, or the comparisons make you unhappy, it's not very useful. Now, in my practice as a doctor, it seems this is more and more of an issue. People think they should be a certain way because of what they're seeing, whether it's on social media, infomercials, listening to it on podcasts or summits. They are concerned that there's something lacking in them because they aren't measuring up to what they see in others. Now, I'm not sure if this plague of constant self-comparison is a new thing. It only seems that it is amplified with our enhanced connectivity through social media, digital media, 24-hour news cycles, and everything else. So the question is, why do we do this? And is there a benefit? And when there's no benefit, how can we stop with the constant comparison? Now, as humans, one of our defining characteristics is the capacity for self-reflection, a desire to understand ourselves, and of course, this requires evaluation. We evaluate ourselves in the way that we know how to, which is to reference somebody similar to us, right? But there's a point where comparison doesn't really make sense. Like looking at models on the covers of magazines, buff guys on the beaches, other people's wealth, other people's health, all these external presentations. I think it's really, really interesting to examine this comparison a little bit closer. Back in the 1950s, there's a social psychologist named Leon Festinger, and he said that people evaluate their opinions and abilities by comparing themselves to others for a couple of reasons, and the one big one being that this is how we learn to define ourselves. This is social comparison theory, and it states that human beings can't actually define themselves independently. We can only define ourselves in relation to somebody else. So when it comes to the question, who am I? We need to look at other people. So I had this experience just recently. I know I do it to myself. And I think that it's time to look at this in the context of my productivity. So I'm building a new web page, and I wanted to see what other high performance coaches are putting there so I can look at their videos, their audios, their pictures, just kind of get a sense of what's going on out there. And I came across this one guy's website, and I was like, oh my gosh, look at this guy. He is so good. You know, he's like delivering 1-minute messages that are connecting. He has the smoldering eyes, the wiggle of the eyebrow, he has the emotion. Everything's right there. I'm like, what? This is so good. And if I tried to do something like that, it's going to take me 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm going to be dissatisfied with results. I keep watching him like, why can I not be like him? And then, of course, I read on his web page, and his name's Michael Legg. He used to be in a famous movie back in the day, Angela's Ashes. He's been an actor for, decades on the stage and TV and films. And now he's a coach helping people deal with comparison and anxiety. I'm like, what? Of course I'm not going to have that little wiggle of the eyebrow and the smoldering eyes. I'm not going to be Michael Legg. He's trained forever to do that. So instead of trying to emulate him, I'm just going to be myself, right? Because no one can do me as well as me. And I've got to realize that in comparing myself to someone with a completely different skill set and background and trying to be like them, I'm setting myself up for a competition that I cannot win. And I won't be satisfied. It will actually undermine my self-confidence. It will lead to jealousy, self-doubt. I know I will not be a more productive person by doing these kinds of comparisons. And I know that when I'm doing comparison like this, it's just distracting me from what I should be doing. And I think a lot of us realize this. So the question is, do we need to stop or change the way we think? And I think the first step is always just being aware. Theodore Roosevelt famously said, comparison is the thief of joy. And I think it can be. Someone else said, comparison is an act of violence against the self. And yeah, it probably can be. But it's not always that way. But just being aware of where you are and understanding what you're trying to accomplish by looking at others is super important. And I like what the famous podcast host Jordan Harbinger has said about comparison. He says, is it really so bad to compare ourselves to other people? The answer is, it depends. If we're comparing ourselves for self-assessment and wondering how we stack up is natural, healthy, and often very helpful. And he would argue, even necessary. And then he goes on to say, but if we're comparing ourselves for self-enhancement, then the process becomes obsessive, toxic, and often very confusing. And of course, oftentimes we are doing these things in tandem without ever realizing it. So I don't have some magic switch that you can just flip to stop comparison. But I'm going to say that this awareness of what comparison is giving you is super, super important. And I think for me, going back to my story about Michael Legg, is that it stopped my creativity and my productivity because I felt like my videos had to be as good as his. But this guy's been doing it for years. Video production is not my thing. Memorizing scripts is not my thing. But connecting authentically and just speaking from the heart, I can do that. So that's what I need to do, right? So in conclusion, I offer you this quote from Bob Goff. We won't be distracted by comparison if we are captivated with purpose. Now, what is our purpose? And how does purpose play into productivity? I'm going to be talking about that on Friday. Think of these things. Be aware of why you're comparing. And I will talk to you soon. Oh, and please, I would really appreciate a rating or review on whatever podcast platform you are listening on. I would truly, truly appreciate that. Thank you.